All right, everyone, welcome back to the deep dive.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we are going to dive into something that on the surface might seem a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
But when you really look at the research, it gets pretty fascinating and compelling.
Yeah,
And that is the role that nutrition plays in our mental well-being.
absolutely. And you sent over some interesting material for us to dive into for this one.
Yeah.
One is from Trudy Scott at everywomanover29.com,
Okay.
where she discusses a TEDx talk by Dr. Julia Rucklidge.
Right.
And then the other post that we're going to look at is from Happy Neuron Pro.
Okay.
And they actually embed that same TEDx talk.
Got it.
So we have both a discussion about the talk and then the talk itself.
Right.
We'll get into.
Yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is to extract the most, interesting, compelling insights from Dr. Rucklidge's work and from the conversation surrounding this connection between what we eat and how we feel mentally. And to kind of set the stage here a little bit, Dr. Julia Rucklidge is a professor of clinical psychology at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about her is that she has degrees in both neurobiology, which is the study of the nervous system, and clinical psychology.
Right.
So she's bringing this really interesting perspective of the brain and mental health together.
Interesting.
And her research has really focused on nutritional interventions for mental health conditions.
Yeah, and she comes out strong right in the beginning of the talk.
Oh, really?
So Trudy Scott quotes her.
Okay.
And she says, optimizing nutrition is a safe and viable way to avoid, treat, or lessen mental illness. Nutrition matters. Poor nutrition is a significant and modifiable risk factor for the development of mental illness.
Wow.
So right off the bat, she's saying that what we consume is a crucial part of our mental state.
Yeah, it's a huge statement.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this a little bit because she brings up a couple of different key points in her talk that really stand out. One is the idea that when our bodies and our brains are properly nourished,
Right.
we are simply more resilient to stress.
Makes sense.
It's kind of like if you're trying to run your car
Okay.
on an empty tank of gas.
You're not going to get very far.
Yeah. And she talks about the overall improvement in well-being when people make these nutritional changes. It's not just one symptom that improves, but she sees that people start to sleep better.
Right.
Their moods stabilize. They have reduced anxiety.
Wow.
And they even have a decrease in cravings for things like cigarettes, cannabis, and alcohol.
It's amazing how much of an effect it really has.
Yeah, and then here's where it gets really interesting, is that she points out that her research, along with findings from other studies, indicates that 60 to 70% of people have a positive response to micronutrients.
That's huge.
Yeah, and they're talking about essential vitamins and minerals,
Sure.
Things that our bodies really need.
Yeah.
So that's a powerful finding.
Yeah. And then in terms of treatment, she has a very interesting approach.
Oh, really?
So she says we should be focusing on making changes to our diet and lifestyle
Okay.
as that first line of defense.
Okay.
Then we bring in therapy.
Okay.
And then if those two haven't been sufficient only, then do we think about medication?
So it's kind of
It's a whole different way of thinking.
a different order than a lot of people might expect.
Absolutely, yeah.
And she uses a really interesting analogy here. She compares this skepticism surrounding nutrition's role in mental health to the skepticism that doctors had about hand washing back in the 19th century.
Oh, wow.
What we now consider to be completely essential to, stopping the spread of disease was once a radical idea.
Yeah, you didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah. And she also brings up the story of limes and scurvy.
Oh.
Back in the 1600s, it became clear that eating citrus fruits would prevent scurvy, which was a deadly disease. And yet it took 264 years for the British government to finally say, okay, we need to put this on ships as part of the sailors' rations.
2.5 centuries.
Yeah, and so it leads to her question. How long will it take us to recognize that suboptimal nutrition is contributing to this epidemic of mental illness?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah, so then this is where the story takes a little bit of a turn.
Oh, really?
So Trudy Scott, in her blog post, includes an update from 2018, where she talks about how Dr. Rucklidge's TEDx talk was actually flagged by the TED organization.
What?
Yeah. So apparently TED felt that there was limited evidence to support the claims made by her in the talk. And Professor Bonnie J. Kaplan from the University of Calgary, who's a supporter of Dr. Rucklidge's work, pointed out that the video had been viewed almost 900,000 times.
It's a lot.
before it was flagged.
Yeah.
And she pointed out that Dr. Rucklidge has published over 35 peer-reviewed publications.
Yeah, that's not exactly limited evidence.
Right. And Professor Kaplan even suggested that maybe this was some kind of lobbying effort against non-pharmaceutical treatments.
All right.
And so TED's explanation was that they were actively in conversation with both Dr. Rucklidge and the organizer of TEDx Christchurch.
Okay.
And that they were reviewing the claims.
Okay.
But in the meantime, the video would remain available.
Oh, so they didn't take it down?
No, they didn't take it down.
Interesting.
Yeah, and actually, Dominic Percalis, who commented on Trudy Scott's blog, actually shared a response that he received from TED that reiterated that they were in conversation with Dr. Rucklidge and that they were reviewing the content.
Yeah, so Professor Kaplan's perspective is really interesting, you know, because she questions whether TED, you know, this organization that's supposed to be about innovation might be stifling new ideas. And, you know, because it's not the traditional medical approach.
Right, right.
And then Trudy Scott puts out a call to action. Okay. She encourages people to watch and share the video to support Dr. Rucklidge's work.
It's interesting how even presenting at TED can come with its own set of challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving on from the TEDx controversy, it's important to understand like the full breadth of Dr. Rucklidge's research interests.
Yes.
And you know, her work really centers on understanding how nutrition can both contribute to mental health issues and how it can be used to treat them.
Of course.
And this includes conditions like ADHD, depression, and even the psychological stress that people experience after natural disasters.
Wow, so a whole spectrum.
Yeah, a wide range of conditions. And she uses different research methodologies to investigate these connections.
And Trudy Scott highlights some of her publications focusing on micronutrients.
Oh, okay.
One was a database analysis, and they found that in the general population, people who struggle with their mood and their anxiety might benefit from taking supplements.
Interesting.
And then another key study that she led was a randomized controlled trial looking at children with ADHD and how vitamin and mineral treatments affected them.
Wow.
And they found that the micronutrients seemed to improve overall functioning emotional regulation and even reduce aggression.
Interesting.
But the effects on like the core ADHD symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsivity were more modest.
Interesting.
And then she also co-authored some research with Professor Kaplan. Where they found that taking nutrient supplements could actually minimize psychological stress.
Oh, wow.
In people who had lived through a natural disaster.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
And it's interesting because it goes back to that idea that if you're well-nourished, your body and brain are going to be able to better cope with stress, whatever kind of stress that is.
Right.
And then there was also a case study that looked at the link between yeast infections, like Candida, and recovering from mental illness. And they suggested that addressing these infections along with micronutrient supplementation could be beneficial.
Interesting. So like attacking it from both sides?
Yeah. And this could be related to the connection between gut health and the production of serotonin. Which is a key neurotransmitter that regulates mood.
Of course, yeah.
And then Trudy Scott mentions a publication that Dr. Rucklidge contributed to called Nutritional Medicine as Mainstream in Psychiatry.
Wow.
So they're really arguing that with all this evidence that links diet and nutrient deficiencies to mental health, nutrition should be a crucial part of psychiatry.
Yeah.
Just like it is in other medical fields.
Right, like cardiology or endocrinology.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
It's interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah.
And you can really tell from Trudy Scott's writing that she is a huge fan of Dr. Rucklidge's work. She actually even mentions that she interviewed Dr. Rucklidge on using nutrition to treat anxiety and depression.
Interesting.
And she kind of brings up that question again.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take for us to take this seriously?
Yeah.
And then she also brings up another interview that she did with Dr. Mark Hyman, who talks about somatopsychic medicine.
And what is that?
And what he observed is that when you treat underlying physical health issues, you often see improvements in things like anxiety, depression, autism, ADD, memory issues, dementia.
It's all connected.
Yeah, so it really reinforces this idea that the mind and body are influencing each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then Dr. Nicole Berkins, who's a clinical psychologist and board-certified nutrition specialist, also weighs in.
Okay.
And she talks about the positive impact that nutrition has on mental health that she sees on a daily basis in her practice. And she actually even recommends Dr. Rucklidge's TEDx video to her patients and families.
Interesting.
And then in the comments section of Trudy Scott's blog, there are all these personal stories from people who have benefited from this approach.
That's great.
Yeah, so Deidre Fraser, who was a participant in a study in New Zealand, talks about how she saw improvement in her happiness, self-worth, and even her friendships.
Wow.
And also her focus increased.
Oh, wow.
And her academic performance improved.
That's great.
And then S.P. Hancock talks about recovering from schizoaffective disorder bipolar type with catatonia.
Oh, wow.
By healing their gut.
Wow.
So they could absorb nutrients from food.
That's amazing.
And they were able to come off of their medications after having previously used the supplement that Dr. Rucklidge researched.
Interesting.
So it's a really powerful story.
Absolutely, yeah.
It sounds like this approach can really make a huge difference in people's lives.
It really can.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, the main theme that emerges is this surprising but potentially life-changing connection between what we eat and how we feel mentally.
For sure.
And Dr. Rucklidge's research has really highlighted this connection for us.
Absolutely. And it goes back to her question.
Yeah.
How long will it take for us to really recognize and act on this information?
Right. So as always, we encourage you, the listener, to go and check out the source material.
Yes.
Dr. Rucklidge's TEDx talk is a great place to start, and then you can dive into the different research papers that we talked about.
Absolutely.
And it really leads to a final question for you.
Yeah.
Given everything that we've discussed,
Right.
what small evidence-based changes could you make in your diet to support your mental well-being?
It's something to think about.
Yeah.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you.